the consecration was made, yes, but the world is damaged. It's so damaged. This country is damaged. We have to pray for the conversion of America. That's really where, because we have been disseminating evil throughout the world through our media and everything for so long. That's why the things we're doing here on these, albeit smaller media, we're getting the word out, okay, and we're standing up for the rights. And I believe that that's what we have to do. We have to take advantage of what's there.
The whole world is sick.
Are you worried about America? I am.
Believe the impossible and you can do the incredible.
Well, welcome to another episode of The Catholic Patriot. I'm your host, Dr. Peter Howard, and I am thrilled to have our guest on today. I've met him about 5 years ago at a Marian conference in Dubuque, Iowa, and it was for the 100th anniversary of Fatima. And this is a man who has so much to offer us, a treasure of knowledge as well as experiences. And so I want to welcome to our show today Dave Carollo, who joins us all the way across the country in New Jersey at the National Shrine for, I guess it would be I call it the Blue Army Shrine, but you can correct me on that. But Dave he's the executive director of the World Apostolate of Fatima. So just imagine that. I mean, this is like an international role. So welcome, Dave, to our podcast.
Thanks, Peter. Great to be here with you. It's the National Blue Army Shrine of Our Lady of Fatima, dedicated to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. That's who we are. And,
there we go. It's not too far from where I grew up. My mother would take me there a number of times, and what a beautiful and peaceful campus it is in Washington, New Jersey. And it's been a while since I've been there, but you can probably give us some updates on that. But there's a replica of the Holy House of Loretto, right? And it's made from a couple of stones that were pulverized and then diffused into all of the stones. Tell us about that.
That's correct. In 1971, 2, 3, 4, in those years when they were building the Holy House and the convent over there, at the same time, Monsignor Capovilla, who was the rector of the Shrine of Loretto in Italy, came here. And at the time, they're like under pain of excommunication, you couldn't take a stone from the house of there. But just so happened that they had to open up the door of the Holy House more because of the number of the crowd, just for safety reasons and, of course, code. So they did cut some of the stone out. He was able to bring some of the stone here for us. Some of it was pulverized and put into the mortar that is in the Holy House here. And by that and by his and by the direction, they extend the indulgence of visiting the Holy House of Loretto for anybody who visits this Holy House here in New Jersey.
Wow.
So it's very special. It really is a very special place. You can get the same indulgence of visiting the actual home of the Holy Family by visiting here. And we hear a lot of miraculous type things. I
was about to ask that. Do you have any great, powerful stories of people who have had miracles and other encounters that are there?
Yeah, spiritual things. I mean, people will say, God, I went in there, I'm so touched. I mean, my prayers are answered in that chapel. Things of that nature. You hear it regularly. I always say to people, they ask me, have you seen any miracles at the shrine? I say, yes, every day at 20 minutes after 12, we have Mass. And when the priest elevates the host, there's a miracle. And if you don't accept that miracle, you accept nothing else, right? But it's true. But there's been a lot of personal miracles that have happened at this shrine overall. That chapel particularly, but of course our big shrine, which you've seen. We have the outdoor shrine, which seats 1,500 under roof outside, which was such a blessing during this COVID period. I mean, we had masses every day throughout 2020. As soon as other than that first month where they weren't able to. The bishop of the diocese here, Bishop Checchio, held the ordinations for the diocese 2 years in a row here in 2020 and again in 2021. He had 5 men and then 4 more ordained in those 2 years. So it was, we were a destination. People that knew of the place really started coming, being outside and that. So it was, what was a difficulty for the church overall, but it was kind of a blessing for us. And we were happy to welcome everybody. So that's our shrine. Our shrine has been here since, we've been here since 1947. The apostolate was founded here in 1947. But this shrine and that into the 70s is when we started the bigger events.
Wow.
So, probably more your perspective, not the 40s.
No. Is there an anniversary that's being celebrated right now at the shrine?
Yeah, well, we've just entered. This is our 75th anniversary as an apostolate. Yeah. So we are.
That's significant.
It is very significant. It's the 105th anniversary, excuse me, of the Fatima apparitions, and of course we were together in Dubuque, as you mentioned, in 2017 for the Fatima centennial, and we had just a great outreach in those 2 years, because the Fatima centennial was actually 2 years. Remember, the angel of peace appeared to the children in 1916, and Our Lady to them in 1917. So we embarked on a 2-year program for the centennial back then, and with our motorhome and our Pilgrim Virgin statue, traveling the country, the world really, we decided we wanted to visit in 100 dioceses in 100 weeks over those 2 years. So we actually ended up visiting 140 dioceses in that time. That's how successful the tour was. We have our motorhome, Our Lady's Chariot, as we like to call it. It's so beautiful. You may have seen it.
No, I haven't.
Really? Well, we'll definitely get you pictures. And it's an RV. It's a motorhome and our custodians travel around, and it's actually very convenient because they'll travel all over the country, and they've been to all 48 contiguous states. Of course, during the centennial 2 years, we actually went to Alaska and Hawaii, also not motorhome, obviously, but we visited all 48 contiguous states and almost all dioceses. I think there's 195 dioceses if you include the Byzantine in the United States, and we got to 140 of them. So it was beautiful. Yeah, but
That's
bringing the message. That's the whole thing. I mean, that International Pilgrim Virgin is really how this apostolate started in 1947, because when Monsignor Harold Colgan, called for that blue army of prayer to counter the red army of atheistic communism. That was 1947, 2 years after the end of World War II, the beginning of the Cold War, and what was in people's minds at that point, to a great degree, was that statement Our Lady made at Fatima: nations could be annihilated. And well, guess what? You just came off of 2 world wars, and the second one ended with the atomic bomb being introduced. So, nations could be annihilated. And so that really resonated, as you know, with people, and that's the apostolate that was founded there on these grounds. This was property owned by Mr. Hafford, John Hafford. Monsignor Harold Colgan and John Hafford came together. John was a former Carmelite, a married man, and an author. And he's the author of 35 books. I mean, and so many of them we republished several of them recently. And so this is, and what was it's just the message of Fatima, for people to live in accord with the Gospels. That's what Our Lady had asked. And 1947 was when John Hafford met with Sister Lucia to develop the famous pledge of the Blue Army, which we have people, they say maybe 20 million people signed it worldwide in the 75 years. And it's a simple pledge to live according to your saying, pray the rosary, be devoted to the brown scapular, live according to your state in life, chastity according to state in life, and work towards the fulfillment of the first Saturday's devotion. And so over these years, many, many people worldwide, we're actually to some degree in 100 countries worldwide. Wow. Every diocese in the United States, to a greater or lesser degree, and some were very active. Others, as you know, were not. But there's still some activity everywhere, and that's why we've really gotten to push in these last few years to bring the the statue tours back up, because that is something that brings the message of Fatima. Our founders wanted us to do two things: bring Fatima to the people and bring the people to Fatima. Well, we own Domus Pachis, which is our hotel retreat center in Fatima, and that was built in 1954 by our founders again, years after. I believe the story is Monsignor Colgan sold his car so they could buy the land for that. and it's been there. And again, like I said, there's some beautiful videos of it, but it's a 110 room hotel with an auditorium and beautiful Latin chapel and a spectacular Byzantine chapel. So, you talk about the East and Russia. Well, this was the promise made by our organization to help bring about the conversion of Russia. And that Byzantine chapel was built for that devotion. And in there is where we housed for many years the famous icon of Kazan, which you are somewhat familiar with. Yeah. And so, again, that's who we are. We're the same organization we always were. Yeah.
That's remarkable. Has the whole COVID and the world changing in the last couple of years, has that slowed down the abilities of the apostolate to have pilgrimages to Fatima, or even in Washington? Have you seen how has it impacted that?
It's impacted it. I mean, I'd be a liar to say it hasn't. I mean, it's really it's redefined a few things, and I think that's true throughout the world. But for example, I I was a member of the 100,000 Mile Club in my travels, for every year.
Nice.
So that backed off a little bit. And then next, it's kind of nice to be home a little bit more. But we were doing a great number of pilgrims. We're hurting at our hotel. We don't know long term if we can operate as a hotel, and there's a number of properties over there that have failed in this time, and actually some big ones too. But the travel to Portugal was difficult. Travel overseas, there's going to be a residual effect for a long time, I'm afraid. But we do, we will not abandon that site. I mean, even if we don't operate as a hotel in the future, I think we will. I believe we'll continue to. It's just that these restrictions, it just doesn't seem to end, and that's, I think, the problem. In 2020, everybody thought, okay, maybe by default it would be good. Well, that didn't happen. Again in 2021. Well, now we're really in the third year of this, and it is redefining many things, not positively, I think, as we well know. The other things that have occurred in this time, the political upheaval, that type of stuff, that obviously hasn't helped. But we're optimistic. I mean, we're here to serve Our Lady, and she's going to make sure that we survive to the degree we're meant to. That's the way we have to look at it. And I think, but as far as here, we've been as active as ever. The shrine has probably been as busy. We've lost some of our big events for a couple of years. The Padre Pio Day, which was huge, that's backed off. Well, a lot of elderly people from New York would come to that, and this was a restricting thing. Our Portuguese walking pilgrimage, which is always an event, was our biggest event of the year, typically over Memorial Day weekend, where the Portuguese people, and there's many in New Jersey, as you well know from here, they would do the walking pilgrimage over 3 days of the Memorial Day weekend, where they would leave from Newark, Elizabeth, New York, I think Philly, maybe Trenton, different areas around New Jersey and the area in Pennsylvania. And over 2 nights, they would come and camp out. And then on Memorial Day, Monday, they would all show up here for a huge event. And we would have as many as 5,000 people here. We always laughed that we had 5,000 people that came in 6,000 cars. It was a logistical nightmare around here every year, but it was very welcome. And the organizers, typically it was a priest from Newark who was the main organizer. He would bring usually a bishop from Portugal. Actually, in 2020, we had Cardinal Marto, who's the bishop of Fatima, invited, and of course they had to be canceled because we didn't, the event never happened. So we're optimistic that these are coming back. Our retreats, we have a retreat center here, and retreats are coming back, and our events on the 13th of May through October, the Fatima anniversaries, of course. They've been big. We have, this year we have on tap some good. I mean, We have Bishop Sweeney from Patterson coming May 13th. We have our own bishop, Bishop Checchio, who will be here, I believe, June. I don't know the date. His Eminence Cardinal Burke is going to be here June 13th, and that's been an annual thing for him. And we're really welcoming him back after his very serious illness, obviously, right. But he's been a good friend, and he said we're on his list of people he's going to keep the promise to. So I'm so thrilled, and so he'll be back June 13th. And also on that day, I have Father Frank Pavone coming from Priest for Life. Mm-hmm. So it should be a real nice 1-2 punch that day. Bishop Joseph Perry, who is our Episcopal advisor, wonderful, good friend. He's an auxiliary bishop in the Archdiocese of Chicago. He'll be here in July. And then throughout the end of the year, we have others. We're getting our schedule will be out here in the next, I would say, 2 weeks. But these events are great. And everything we do is broadcast. Okay. Mm-hmm. What we're doing here today, so one of the things that's happened during this COVID period for all of us, I think, is that we learned to use this technology more. Now, to the point where, one bishop I know said, he said he had Zoom fatigue. Okay, you're tired of doing every meeting on Zoom. And I get to the point where you want to be with people. Right. And we'll be doing it in California for our annual meeting this year, later this month, actually. And I'm looking forward to being with everybody because, not that I want to spend a lot of time in Los Angeles with all of the restrictions and that, but I'll get to the airport and zip where I got to go.
Exactly.
There's a lot of restrictions out there right now, but that's okay. It's no different than Chicago or New York. It is. I hope these are temporary. We'll have to see. But but we have, I think, during this time, maybe it's been a time of reflection. Our doors are open here. We're an outside venue during season, obviously. Not right now. Today where it was 4 degrees this morning. Well, that's not the case, but yeah. I think this has been a very educational time for us, and we've adapted. Okay, I hope we've adapted well enough. Obviously, you're doing the same, and I believe that this message of Fatima and the world we're in today, you look at the events, and we spoke earlier a little bit, I touched certainly on what's going on in Russia and Ukraine right now. And, this is the world we're in. We're in a very tenuous world. So what do? We do what Our Lady asked us to do 105 years ago. It hasn't changed. It's just that, have we listened?
Right. That's the biggest question.
Have we listened? Yeah. Yeah, we have to. So that's really where the apostolate is. But I think the things that the prophecies of Our Lady. Of course, I don't like to just jump on prophecies. Aha! See, this is happening now, because I believe anything can be turned back with prayer. I'm a total optimist when it comes to that. No matter how bad it looks, how far along the road we are, if like the king of Nineveh, when he put out the order to put on the sackcloth and ashes. If we did that, I think all of this evil would disappear. And maybe I'm just naive, but I don't believe I am.
Well, Jesus' mercy is unfathomable. We do know at some point that the scales will tip to the justice side, as we know from St. Faustina. And I hope that it seems like we're beginning to experience that today. I'm curious of your thoughts on, we're 5 years past the 100th anniversary in 2017. And I always saw that, and I know you did, pretty much all of us who were tuned into Our Lady and Fatima and for more than just that time, for many, many years, just saw that as a pivotal moment. And it seemed like that year just came and went. Now, when you're busy and you're all year long, it seems like there's the frenzy everywhere in a positive way. At the same time, here we are, 5 years later, within just a few years of that, the entire world changed. And, how, looking back, how did you see that 2017 year? What did it mean to you looking forward? I remember I had a brief conversation with Father Mike Gately, and we didn't say too much. He was in Peoria, and our paths had crossed, and it was kind of meeting an old friend from school. And we just had that sense of, this is it. This is the last warning for the world to come back to God is right now. And we had signs everywhere. When I give retreats, I walk people through all the signs that were happening in the heavens as we have with, the significances of, blood moons, tetrads, all these kind of things that a lot of times the secular world gets fascinated with, but we don't necessarily see it as in a biblical sense of how God speaks to us through them and how they would coincide with major feast days and Our Lady of Knock. It was incredible. And I just kept feeling like this is it. Like something big is going to happen, and this is our last chance to really get ourselves where we need to be, because they're going to be sweeping. And then, as we know, when 2020 hit, who would have known? Within a couple of weeks, the entire world would be shut down, and we've never gone back. Like the world will never be. Well, it'll never be the same. Whatever follows this. It'll never be what it was, because now the battles is kicking in. So what are your thoughts looking and reflecting on that?
Well, and that's a good point, because I was asked many, many times, even during that period, what was the fruit of the Fatima Centennial? Well, I think it was revelation. I think we saw. Look, for example, the following year. Look at the things that came out about the church, as sad as that is for all of us. McCarrick, all these type of things, Well, you know what? These are painful for Catholics. It's horribly painful for me to see this. My church, okay? I mean, I've watched my church deteriorate. I'm 66 years old. So I've seen a different, I grew up in a different church than we're in today, okay? Well, that was the biggest thing we saw. But then in retrospect, when you look back, these things have been happening for a long, long time. So I think the whole thing of the Fatima year was revelation regarding the church, society. Interesting, the politics. I think that how they have shifted, and not to become political, but look at the differences in this country. For example, okay, we're not like. I remember back in when I was young boy. I remember there was the famous, what was the difference between Nixon and Kennedy? Well, it was about this far apart, okay? Now, what do we find with our political parties? They're not even, I don't even think they represent the same country anymore to a great degree. It's a scary thing, but that's how divided we've become as a nation. And if you look at it, Peter, I mean, I see it's believers and non-believers. And I don't mean Democrat, Republican, you can put the moniker on as you see fit.
Right.
But the reality is, it's people who believe in God and want the laws of God to be the foundation of our society, and those who want nothing to do with it. So it seems like it just the political shifts are. I don't think a country can survive that way for any length of period. I don't see it, not for a long period at least. We have to. We who are believers, have to get that foundation back in place, or we're done as a nation. I mean, I really believe that. The church, the same way. I mean, I think there's so much division in the church. I mean, let's say 70% of nominal Catholics don't believe in a real presence. I don't know how real those numbers are.
No, I've heard it on a few studies have come out very similar.
Yeah. So that is, I mean, you're not Catholic if you don't believe in a real presence, right? Okay. So that coincides well, excuse me, with the reality that 25% of nominal Catholics attend Mass on the weekends, right? Once a week. So we're in a position where we're being redefined. It's all being redefined. When I grew up in Chicago in the 60s, there were 500 Catholic parishes. That's only in 2 counties. Think about that. 500 Catholic parishes. You didn't go a block and a half without a Catholic church. And they all functioned, had Mass. Well, what is it now? It's down to maybe 350. And I think with these consolidations, it's going to be another, you might have 200 parishes in that archdiocese when all is said and done. And I use that as my frame of reference because that's where I was from. Well, that's pretty much happening everywhere. When you cut the number of parishes down in less than half, what kind of a statement is that? And talk about, as I said again, about the Our Lady's statement that nations could be annihilated. Okay, well, I contend that it has happened. Or it's happening through what? Contraception and abortion, and we are we are annihilating ourselves in the truest sense of the world. I mean, we're annihilating our culture, certainly even our Catholic Christian culture, where even, you look at the divorce rates being what they are, and they're about the same amongst Catholics as they are amongst people of secular people or people of other religions. So, the culture the church used to, develop the culture. Now the culture is developing the church and the believers, I guess, with the exception of those who truly understand. It's difficult.
Well, it is the reality that we've all need to face. That's we've had prophetic voices in the 20th century, many of them. But you look at what John Paul II said when he came to America in 1976. Many are familiar with that quote that he gave, that we are in the final confrontation between, the church and the anti-church, the gospel and the anti-gospel.
Right.
And Fulton Sheen said it back in the 1940s. I am always using his quote, but he says, we're living in the times of the apocalypse, the last days of our era. The two great forces of the mystical body of Christ and the mystical body of Antichrist have now drawn up the battle lines for the catastrophic contest. And that's a direct quote. They saw it coming. And John Paul II is like, this is all within divine providence. But he said many Americans don't understand it. And he says, but we have to embrace it and we have to face it courageously. And I just see like how, when you look from a heavenly perspective, it's hard. You cannot argue that heaven has not tried everything to wake up this world. And now we're, like Sheen would say, pray to God that America doesn't turn back to God only in ruins. We're going to go down to our knees one way or the other. And so it is interesting, through the eyes of faith and through the lens of Fatima, a lot of things come to mind. What Our Lady has said, certain things that are somewhat enigmatic because there's not maybe a much of a commentary on it, like a phrase such as, regarding Portugal, will always keep the faith, the dogma of the faith. People say, well, what does that mean? And it seems to allude to a big apostasy that will take place, which we're in. I mean, there's no period in church history that's more confusing than right now about even what we teach. And yet we're trying to get out there and fight on the front lines of the battle. And yet it's almost going into it with zero credibility from the world. Like you said, it's now the culture, everything's flipped. Who's informing what? And just to even voice something is like, you just better accept at least a white martyrdom.
Oh, sure. And we all do. But I mean, that is, look, I mean, getting to heaven is not an easy thing. Okay. So if we'd rather get these bumps here than in purgatory. Let's just be realistic. And I think that's what you talk about. Our Lady of Akita. Mm-hmm. What's he say? Cardinal against cardinal, bishop against bishop. I mean, these things are happening. You look every day. I mean, and I'm not even passing judgment. You see what's going on. You hear what's being said, one side, the other. I mean, it is that kind of division in the church is really, I think, a sign of a time where I would say it's not a point of no return, because nothing is. I'm one of these. I call myself an optimistic pessimist. I'm kind of like, but I believe there's always the great. And my mother always put it well when talked about and mentioned something. She would say, "Don't ever worry about the end times. Be in a state of grace and worry about your own end time, because that's truly what you have to do." We have to, and it starts with us. It starts with our personal holiness. And if we are not, you cannot give what you do not have. So first you have to become holy in order to try to get other people to do it, and to become holy, to learn things. Promoting the message of Fatima. We say to people, you need to learn, live, and then spread the message of Fatima, because that's what it's all about. John Paul II said, St. John Paul in the 90s said that Fatima message is more relevant today than it was in 1917. Now, he said that in the 90s. I contend that it's even more relevant today than it was when he said it.
No question about that.
Because it is, but it's like you look at a statue of Our Lady, and I think, okay, she comes to life, and she's probably looking at it saying, are you stupid people ever going to listen? I mean, it really is almost like, like your mother looking at you saying, are you ever going to listen to what I've been trying to tell you? I'm trying to save you here, and you're just too obstinate to really follow my direction. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the world. That's the world we're in.
This is always something that strikes me. I talk to my kids about it from time to time, because the example, the precedent is there. And that is, what we're talking about, this message of Fatima, it's extremely serious, and yet God chose, to send His mother to 3 children. And at that time, back in 1916, when He sends the angel, there's 6, 8, and 9, and remember, the angel says, are you to offer sacrifices? He teaches them adoration, the beautiful Fatima prayer. But I remember when He appeared the second time, I'm kind of paraphrasing it, but it's similar from what I read, is the angel appears like, what are you doing?
What are you doing?
You need to be offering sacrifices. And imagine a parent doing that today with their children. They'd be like, you're just extreme. You're overdoing it. You're going to ruin your child by teaching this. And I'm like, that shakes me up as a father, because I have children right through that age right now. And and I look down, I'm like, man, I have a 6-year-old, and then the next year when Jacinta's 7, she sees hell, and it's like Fatima is a serious message, and and knowing that, it comes with a great responsibility. What are your thoughts about that aspect of it?
Well, I think that's it. Think of how profound that age. It shows that at any age you can be given. See, God comes to the simple, okay? Because why? People say, oh, because or whatever, they're pure. No, they're going to listen. They're going to believe, okay? When they were shown these certain things, when they were told certain things, did they doubt it? Are you willing to offer your lives in prayer and reparation for the conversion of sinners? Well, they said yes. They didn't go home and they didn't check their day timer. They didn't figure it out or go into their phone. Well, let me see if I can do this because I got to do this. And that. No, yes, absolute yes. Simple. And that's where, come to me as a little child, the Lord says, right? Because that's the simplicity. Not to be childish, but to be childlike. Mm-hmm. You have to be childlike in your faith. When you go to communion, what should you do? Lord, make me a better person. Because that's what needs to be. Make me a better person. Don't say, well, let me tell you what I'm going to do for you. No. It doesn't work like that. When we have ideas, we bring them forth. We hope they're the right thing. But on the same token, we have to look for that guidance. And I think, and accept things when they come. Are you willing to offer your lives and accept with submission the trials that are going to come your way? Look at these kids. I found out something recent that my grandfather actually died of the Spanish flu, I found out, in 1924. My dad was 7 when his father died. And sure enough, it was the same pandemic that killed Jacinta and Francisco in the 19 and 20. And it's kind of interesting that you realize, Jacinta particularly, this little girl died in a hospital in Lisbon, away from her family, all alone. That was one of her biggest fears, is to be alone as she was dying. Yet she offered that up. Think about it. Just the profound nature of their spirituality. The angel of peace prepared them. Sister Lucia would say later that the most important messages of Fatima were the ones in 1916, when the angel of peace prepared them for the message. Not disrespecting Our Lady in any way, but to them, that was the preparation. And that's what we have to look at, is to be prepared. We have to prepare ourselves for that type of thing. These children were just way beyond their years in spirituality and holiness. And, she was cute, or he was, maybe they were cute. Okay, that's fine. But cute is one thing, but they were profound. They were way beyond us in spirituality. And it is because they accepted it. Mm-hmm. They never learned to read and write. I mean, really, Jacinta and Francisco didn't. And they'd asked, are we going to go to heaven? And Our Lady said to them, Jacinta and Francisco will come soon, but Lucia, you must stay a while longer to make me known and loved. Well, that was 88 years. So it makes you think about what eternity is, right?
A day is like a 1,000 years. 1,000 years is like a day.
Think about that. Yeah. But they taught us by their youth, with their young simplicity, and she taught us by her enduring simplicity for those 88 years. And it wasn't easy for her. She had a whole different vision of what her life would be, that she would be out there promoting the message of Fatima. And she had to realize at the time it was going to be from within the confines of a cloister. Mm-hmm. And she touched the world. You realize that her cause. So why is she just canonized? Well, people don't understand how the church operates, but there are like 70,000 documents being reviewed. 70,000. When Our Lady said, "I want you to learn to read and write," she took it seriously. Okay, and so she corresponded with what? With lay people and priests and nuns, with bishops, with cardinals, with popes, with politicians. I mean, everybody. And they have to look for any error in any of that. I'm sure she's going to be canonized, but the point is, you can see the difference in their lives, but the similarity, because she stayed through all those years and she gave us direction. She watched things happen. She watched Russia spread her errors, which was the biggest thing. It wasn't as much about the material deprivation. Certainly that's a factor, but that's a byproduct. It was the atheism and taking God out of everything, and killing God, as they like to say. Obviously you're never going to kill God, and I learned that. I think I was able to touch on it very strongly with people in my trips overseas. And my wife is from Poland, so through she was a young girl when they came here. She was 10, but conversations with my in-laws, you can really understand what that was like to have to deal with a communist system and the evil of the communist system, what was really behind it. And you get to see that. The Poles, God bless them, fought and kept their churches open. But for that reason, they were deprived of material goods. My mother-in-law, often even to this day, she'll talk about when she had to get on a train and go to Czechoslovakia to buy certain things because they couldn't get them in Poland. The Russians made sure they couldn't get it, and so they suffered for their faith. But God bless them. Look, it gave us a man like Pope John Paul II. So that's it's again. The suffering on earth is nothing compared to where we go after.
Indeed. The little children are that story is so much deeper than many people really understand. And I think too, of parents today Catholic parents have an enormous responsibility to not only know the message, but they've got to start transmitting it to the children. We're like already in a war. We're in a war. We're in a global war, a culture war, and it's deeper than that. Probably than anything else at stake. And yes, then there's all these, viruses and things. It's like we should be focusing with our families on passing this to our kids, knowing that they can handle it. Like you were saying, they're primed, they're going to listen. But if they don't hear it, like think about just that effort, that fight that the devil's trying to do just to stop that message from being passed down, because they're the ones who are probably going to be really save the world and bring about the most conversions because of the power of their prayer. Yeah. It's extraordinary just to think about that responsibility. Yeah. I wanted to shift to something. There's a number of things I have, but I want to be respectful of time. Russia is a central figure in all of the message and the history of Fatima. And here we are 105 years later, and it's back on the front line again. And I always remember something that two saints, well, one's not a saint yet, Fulton Sheen and St. Maximilian Kolbe, but especially Fulton Sheen had spoken so positively, hopeful. Talk about an optimist too. But he was, I'll see if I can even pull it up if I have it here. He said this. He said, he spoke about first how there's a distinction between, we're talking about communism and Russia itself and the errors of Russia that will spread. Because Russia has been a perpetual object of demonization even to today, when the reality is that Russia is more converted than most of the world is right now. And Sheen said this. He says, when Russia does receive the gift of faith, its role will be that of an apostle to the rest of the world. It will help bring faith to the rest of the world. Why should it be the means of evangelizing nations of the world? Because Russia has fire. Russia has zeal. God could do something with the hate of a Saul by turning it into love. He could do something with the passion of a Magdalene by converting it to zeal. But God can do nothing with those who are neither hot nor cold. These he will vomit from his mouth. and he talked about like Russia was the launching point for the errors. The emphasis is more on the errors than anything else. And we look today, the West has embraced all of it and worse. Russia has flat out rejected the woke culture. They believe in firmly in male and female. They've rejected all of that. One of the few countries in the world has done that, and they've been focusing more on returning to their Christian roots than any other country that I know of. I mean, as far as like other than some of the obvious ones in Poland, but we're talking about in the world, but in comparison to the West, and so I think about that, and then St. Maximilian Kolbe. He had he said, "The day is not far off, nor a mere dream, when the statue of the Immaculata will be enthroned by her knights in the very heart of Moscow." Now, you've traveled to Russia. You know so much of the life of the church, not just of the West, but especially of the East. What are your thoughts? Like, how can we make sense of Russia in this divine plan? And then if we have time, how do we see what's going on with Russia now? I see it as a big diversion, but anyway, I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Well, I think keep in mind one thing: no country on earth, no country in history has had more oratories dedicated to the Blessed Virgin Mary than Russia, historically. Okay, what does that tell you? There's a great devotion to Our Lady over there. Yes, it's Orthodox, not Catholic, but there's still, keep in mind the Orthodox Church still has apostolic succession and these things where obviously Protestant churches and that don't have. So there's will this unification come? Yeah, I believe it will. I don't know when that will happen. Maybe not in a lifetime. I don't know. But I think that there is the Russian people want something more. I mean, the first time I was there was 2007. It was at the invitation of Archbishop Kondrashevich, who was at that time the Archbishop of Moscow. And he had rebuilt the cathedral there. It was beautiful work. And this is the 90th anniversary of Fatima. He held a conference on the 90th anniversary of Fatima around that week. And it was a great experience. And here we were after one of the masses having a Eucharistic procession outside of the church in Moscow. We'd have been shot 20 years ago for attempting it anyway. You couldn't do it anyway. We never got into the church to start with. And that just struck me so strongly, that they are going to be a force for good. I now, you look at 100,000 troops sitting at the Ukrainian border right now. Personally, I think that to jump a little bit into the politics, I think that's them trying to test our leadership in this country right now. That's the big part of what's going on there. But that, we'll see how that plays out. Hopefully a peaceful end. They told me I recently interviewed a priest that is a Ukrainian, and of course they see it differently because they're afraid.
Right.
But on the same token, I think that it was Mikhail Gorbachev that made a statement one time. It was very profound. He said an alliance between the United States and Russia could lead the world. Well, here we were, the Cold War adversaries. But we never did fire a shot between us. I have to think that there was some common sense in that relationship, even in the worst days of the Cold War. Whatever, I believe, my experience there, our apostolate had a big, and actually on two fronts, we were very much involved with Russia. In 1967, Pope Paul VI blessed 25 statues for the world and entrusted 3 of them to us. One for the United States, one for Cuba, and one for Russia, with the understanding is that we would get those statues into the communist countries when, in fact, the communists were gone, and that could be done. Now, on the other side, the famous icon of Kazan, which you're aware of, and the icon of Kazan, which was icon of the Romanov family. It was put out on the black market in 1917, 18, something like 1919. Maybe know a little bit of the history. They were tearing down churches. Well, they weren't just getting rid of things. They also they needed some hard currency because the communist system was not supporting things well, especially initially. So that was sold on the black market. Through some interesting machinations. It fell into the hands of a man by the name of Michael Mitchell Hedges, who he was an archaeologist and explorer, but he was supposedly the character after whom they modeled Indiana Jones' character after.
Oh.
So he owned this icon for many years. 1959, he died. His daughter put it out and to be sold. Our founder fundraised, got the money, and purchased it so that we would have that to fulfill our promise, and we would give it back to the Russians when the time would come. So that was housed in our chapel, our Byzantine chapel in Portugal, for a good number of years. In 2004, at the request of Pope John Paul II, he asked for it actually a few years earlier, kept it in his chapel in the Vatican, and then it was returned to the Orthodox Church in Russia in 2004. Move ahead to 2008, we had the Odessa statue. We call it the Odessa statue because it was one of those 25 statues that had been blessed by Paul VI, and it was it had been damaged in a fire, and then it was rebuilt. The fire we had right here at the shrine, actually. And in 2008, we returned it, and I was very honored to be invited to the dedication of the Catholic Church in Kazan, the only Catholic church in the city of Kazan. Now, Kazan, just for a little geography lesson, is in Tartarstan. That's one of the republics that stayed with the Russian Federation after the dissolvement of the Soviet Union. And it's about 500 miles east of Moscow. Tartarstan is primarily a Muslim country, although that town, that city it's been the Russians and the Tartars, they put trade above everything else, and they cooperated going back hundreds and hundreds of years, So the city of Kazan is a place that had, now this is going back 12, 13, 14 years ago, 28 mosques, 28 Russian Orthodox churches. They kept the balance, so there would never be, the administration, everything was all Muslim. So the Muslim mayor, who was a thinker, he figured that we have all these expatriate Catholics who come, they were Russian, they were Polish, they were from Belarus, they were Lithuanians, Western Ukrainians, they're Roman Catholic. And they were having mass at the chapel at a cemetery. So he builds, by public funds, this beautiful church, the Exaltation of the Cross. I was invited to be a speaker there. It was a beautiful event. And so we gifted the Odessa statue. The reason it's called the Odessa statue is years prior, we had tried to bring it into Russia clandestinely, and it got turned back at the port of Odessa in Ukraine. So it got to be known as the Odessa statue. Anyway, it made it. So now you have the icon of Kazan in the cathedral, the Orthodox cathedral here, and about 2 blocks away at the Church of the Exaltation of the Cross is the Odessa statue. So our apostolate has a big mark in the city of Kazan. I was very, very honored to be part of that.
Wow.
We were well received, and received very well by the Muslims. That day we were there on that dais was Carlos Sedano was there from the Vatican. There was the bishop of the diocese there. There was the head of the Orthodox Church. There was the president or the mayor of Kazan and the president of the Tartarstan parliament, and the head of the Muslim community was there. So after the dedication, we all walked into the church, and he couldn't stay because by Muslim Islamic law he couldn't stay for a Catholic mass, but he came through and he walked with me, and he turned to me and he said, "I want to thank you for everything your organization did for this city." Wow, that was coming from the leader of the Muslim community in that town. So Our Lady is that's another thing too. And Bishop Sheen spoke about this.
Yeah, I was about to mention that. Yeah,
of Islam. Yeah, Fatima.
Exactly.
Okay, and Guadalupe. Is it interesting that Our Lady appears in towns that are named? We have Muslim names.
Right.
Believe me, that conversion, that coming together is going to happen. That's why I don't think the end is that close, to tell you the truth. There's a lot of work to do. Father John Hardin always told us that. He said, first we have to convert the Chinese, we have to convert the Muslims. He said, we got a lot of work ahead of us, so don't think you're going to check out soon.
Mm-hmm.
But
world events have a way of doing strange things to countries and cultures and faiths and humanity in general that I think that we, in many respects, we haven't seen anything yet on that scale that, as we've seen, things can shift in a snap of a finger. So I don't know. There's always there's that sense of, there's that Latin phrase, what is it? Motus in fine velocior, things quicken at the end. And
Yes,
we're all experiencing that right now. There's a quickening that is, and that's why it's like, there's an excitement because we know it's coming, but it's sort of like, I like the analogy of a hurricane. As you get closer to the eye,
Right.
it's the most fierce part is right on that ring,
That's right.
and then, so that's fascinating. All just that history and where the World Apostolate of Fatima has fit into that, because it really is, it's the key to all of these different things as Our Lady, as we see, as you mentioned, with the name Fatima itself, connecting it to the Muslims, and Our Lady, connecting the old world and the new world. I talked about that with Guadalupe in Spain, and then Mexico City.
Right. Exactly.
So as we get to the end of our time, I'd love to have you back. Gosh, so many times if I could grab you again.
Anytime.
This is important for me. I tell people every time I speak, and I use something that I got from the World Apostolate. It was an article, and it has to do with the whole question that's divisive among, or like, I hate to use labels, but like the traditional Catholics and in some communities where they say, well, the consecration never happened and this and this. And I'm like, well, there's a lot of evidence. And also, Sister Lucia has said, I think at least 3 times now, like we have record of her saying this. And there's one quoted in this article. And if I could just quote it for a second, this was, it was in response to a specific question from Father Fox. So he had an encounter with her. And maybe you wrote this article, I'm not sure, but it says, the excerpt of a translation of a question in July 1st, 1990, Sister Lucia says, I come to answer your question. If the consecration made by Pope John Paul II on March 25th, 1984, in union with all the bishops of the world, accomplished the conditions for the conversion of Russia according to the request of Our Lady in, I don't know if it's pronounced Toy, on June 13th, in 1929. Yes, it was accomplished. And since then, I have said that it was made. And I say that no other person responds for me. It is I who receive and open all letters and respond to them. How are people coming to the conclusion that it wasn't fulfilled? And they keep saying, especially in light of Russia now, it's like, well, that's all because of this, versus I see what's happening now as the effects of that. Communism going now within 5 years. And here we are, Russia's more closer to the Christian roots. And looking at Sheen and Colby, it's like Russia's going to probably be the catalyst who's going to help a completely, I don't say atheistic West, but we are certainly completely secularized, it's basically the same thing, to bring us back and through who knows what circumstances. But I just get mesmerized how people can say that hasn't happened. I mean, any thoughts on that?
Well, it is, and I like to say, and I speak often in places where people who in front of people who don't believe the consecration was done. Is that here's my point. Two things I like to say. One, yes, it was done. It was done in 1984, 55 years after it was requested. 55 years. Well, guess what? In those 55 years, Russia spread her errors in a huge way. Now, look at it this way. If I go out and I take a baseball bat and I whack your car today, okay, and I whack it every day until you stop me, okay. If I do it 2 or 3 days, you've got some dents in your car. If I do it every day for 55 years, your car is destroyed. Let's be realistic, okay. And that's what I try to point out. I mean, why did it take 55 years? I don't know why Pius XI, Pius XII did attempt it, but in World War II. Why didn't John the 23rd, Paul the VI? We don't know about John Paul I, his short pontificate. I don't know. I'm not Pope. I'm not there. I can't understand why. There's reasons it didn't happen, so that's water under the bridge, I guess.
Right.
So, yes, it was done. Look at what happened, and look at how quickly it happened. I mean, because there was a strain in the Russian military by 1985 that did not like what was happening. They were ready to pull the trigger on World War III. They just said, they're going to go out in a blast. And that's when they had that terrible
explosion.
The explosion,
That's
which
right.
really crippled their military. Who knows what would have happened? And that could be, I believe, a direct result of that consecration a year earlier. So, and then you came into the 90s. Now, what happens in a country coming off of 70 years of mandated atheism. Come on. I mean, you don't change overnight. But despite that, look at how quickly it changed. I mean, I was first there, 15 years afterwards. I wasn't there. People went in the 90s said it was the wild, wild east. That's what I used to call it, because it was, I mean, it was something. It was a time of a disruption. And one quick story: when I was in Kazan in 2008, I spent that 5 days. I had an interpreter with me, a wonderful guy, a guy about my age, Alexander. What an intelligent man! He spoke all kinds of languages. He had served in the Russian military. He was a strong Russian. He had no, he didn't mind the communist system. That worked for him. And he told me something very profound. He said, perestroika killed my father. Okay. He said, that's all the man knew all his life. The cradle to grave thing, as deficient as it might have been in many ways, it's what they knew. And now all of a sudden it's all changed, and he lost the money that he had put away because the ruble became worthless, all those types of things. So, I really got to understand, in the mind of someone who lived it from the other side. Very true. So, I don't know. I believe that, yes, the consecration was made, yes, but, the world is damaged. It's so damaged. This country is damaged. We have to pray for the conversion of America. That's really because we have been disseminating evil throughout the world through our media and everything for so long. That's why the things we're doing here on these, albeit smaller media, we're getting the word out, okay? And we're standing up for the rights. And I believe that that's what we have to do. We have to take advantage of what's there. Absolutely.
Indeed. Well said. Yeah, well said. And this is the battleground for so many things. And there's a lot of, I think there's a divine mission still with the United States, whether or not it remains. Well, I'll say America probably is more accurate, but as far as what this is going to turn into, I don't quite know, but I do think that, the connection between Our Lady being the patroness under the title of the Immaculate Conception, the Immaculate Heart of Mary, the triumph, of her Immaculate Heart. These are not just insignificant titles thrown around. When you start, like you and I like to do, we like to connect the dots and weave things and see like the divine hand working, and that is one exciting contemplation to have.
Absolutely.
and so, well, this has been phenomenal. Like I said, I could keep going and on, and I hope that we can get you on again.
Really.
Dave, what's the best way for people to follow and sign up with all that's going on with the World Apostolate of Fatima?
Well, our website, bluearmy.com, has a lot of information. We do broadcast all of our events. Our daily mass is broadcast, and which we were doing it 5 years before COVID. So all the parishes around here, people appreciate, how do you do this? Set me up. Even a cathedral, we would help them. But that was great because, they were struggling to quickly get up. We had been doing it for quite a while. And I think that's it. We want to broadcast, but our events are, I don't know if you've ever been here for a 13th event, but, with May through October, we start with these are the Fatima days, but so many other, and every day there's something going on. Just visiting here, it's a peaceful place. Our website, bluearmy.com, gives you what we're doing throughout the country. Our statue tours, follow the list if they're anywhere in your area, or if anybody is interested in bringing Pilgrim Virgin statue to there. We have three statues actually that travel, and we're very happy to schedule something for you because the Fatima message is the message. I mean, it truly is.
Indeed.
And because why is that? Because it's a reiteration of the Gospels. What she asked us to do in 1917 was to live in accord with the Gospels as we have been told to do from the time Moses brought those tablets down until our Lord came and reiterated everything in the Christian era. Nothing's changed. I mean, those are the rules of life, and it's natural law. And if we have to accept it and work within it, and believe me, that's how we will overcome everything else. That's why I really am optimistic that with we are maybe in the quote end times, but remember, in the end, my Immaculate Heart will triumph. There will be an era of peace conceded to mankind, and peace is not necessarily, it's not just defined by lack of warfare. Peace has to be in here. Okay. And it's that peace you have when you're living, when you feel, now none of us know exactly our state, but when you feel that, yes, if I were to die today, I'm prepared, or at least I believe I'm trying to be prepared, that's the peace, living within that peace of knowing that you are in God's grace. And when you look at all the sin in the world, especially some of this more flamboyant stuff that's out there, it is a medication. Pleasure seeking is a medication against guilt. Well, that's what we have. If we cleanse ourselves, and none of it. Don't get me wrong. I've got a lot to make up for in my life. I'm not trying to stand here and say that I'm Mr. Holy. I'm anything but that. But I will stand up and say, we better do our best to clean these garments before we leave this earth as best we can. And we do that most by living properly and helping others to do the same, and praying for the conversion of sinners, because that's the key. That's what these little children did, and that's what they taught us. And there's charity. It's living charity, because you can't, faith, hope, and charity. Faith and hope won't be here in the next life, but charity. If you live charity now, you take it into the next life, and nothing more charitable than working for the salvation of souls.
Amen to that. Well, like Fulton Sheen said, if souls aren't saved, then nothing is saved. Right. And one of the great ways that I always recommend for families is to pray the rosary in your home every day, because like she said, pray the rosary every day for peace and an end to the war. Well, yeah, that was World War I, but I mean, look, it's an unending war right now. It's just like Sheen says, if we don't get the bad blood out, which is where the real problem is, then we're just going to end up in cyclic wars, and everyone will get worse. And here we are. So we're blessed to live in this time, and it's talk about literally being in the army of Our Lady. For those who are watching, when you're listening to all that Dave has been sharing with the apostolate and just his own experiences, the power of our Blessed Mother is extremely real. And not only that, I mean, God has delegated to her, he's entrusted to her really these times. She's the mediatrix of mercy. One of her titles is that, all the graces, these are all coming through her. So let's listen to our mother. Like Dave will say, I'll say, well, I'm not perfect. I'm certainly striving to be holy, but my wife will be the first to derail my canonization cause. Oh, mine. But it's like, but you keep trying, and we do it ultimately, not because, I want to do it or this. It's our mother asked us in heaven, so you do it. And she's a Jewish mother.
She's a Jewish mother. Yeah. But also remember one thing, there's no creature created who understands the amazing reward of heaven, but also the terrible horror of sin. Okay. And she, when they say that Our Lady was sad looking, in an apparition or even a statue, it's like, well, folks, she's not sad. She adores at the highest level there is possible. Okay. But she has a profound sadness for us, because we are separating ourselves from that possibility. And that's why she has a sadness for us when we don't follow. I believe that, God sent her. I'm sure he did. But I would have to believe that she wanted to come and be here, because she knows the price that we would pay if we don't follow the rules. And that's really what it's about. We have to. Pretty simple. Yeah.
That is what it's all about. It's not the hokey pokey. This is what it's all about.
You got that right. Absolutely, Peter. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Dave, for joining us. I want to ask everybody to go check out bluearmy.com. And to the extent that they keep having their activities, make an effort to be a part of that. If they're still, are you still doing pilgrimages?
Oh, we are. Yeah, they're starting up again now. So join us. Our Ave Maria Pilgrimage Tours is our company, part of the apostolate, or it's related. Okay. And we're back, and come visit us in Fatima at Domus Pachis. It is the most beautiful place, and we welcome you back. We need the pilgrims.
Well, I'd love to go there myself. All right. Well, thank you so much. God bless you, Dave. We'll hopefully have you on again soon.
Anytime. Let me know. Okay. God bless.
Well, thanks everybody for joining Dave and I on this exciting episode of The Catholic Patriot. So much to ponder. Most importantly is take it to heart and then live it in your life. It's not very difficult to pull out a rosary and just start praying. Our Lady never said you had to pray it a certain way, so be creative. You can pray some decades in the morning, some in the evening, pray it all at once, pray while you're driving the car. point is, find that wisdom to why the rosary. It's been the go-to prayer in every time of crisis. So we have a great resource with the World Apostolate of Fatima, and Dave gave us a lot to chew on. So thanks for joining us today, and I can't wait to see you on another episode of The Catholic Patriot.
Right is right if nobody is right. Wrong is wrong if everybody is wrong. And believe me, in this error-infested world, what we really need is a church and an authority that is right not when the world is right, but one that is right when the world is wrong.
Never in history has the prayer of the Rosary been more needed to save our families, our countries, and defeat the evils of the world than now. The Fulton Sheen Institute worked closely with the Roma Rosary to develop the most unique, beautiful, and meaningful rosary that was inspired by Fulton Sheen's World Mission Rosary. This special handcrafted rosary continues Sheen's passion to support the mission of the Church to evangelize the entire world. Each decade of the rosary has a different color, which corresponds with a different continent. Yellow for Asia, red for the Americas, white for Europe, blue for the nations of Oceania, and green for Africa. Each Fulton Sheen Aroma Rosary comes with a set of 4 pure essential oil blends that have been chosen for their therapeutic and theological significance. These blends correspond to the 4 mysteries of the Rosary. Simply choose the oil for the mystery of the day, drop a small drop in the palm of your hand, and massage the oil over the surface, being sure to catch the lava beads. You're good to go, and your prayer will linger longer with these beautiful aromatic notes. Every Fulton Sheen Aroma Rosary you purchase supports our mission to fight the battle for the hearts and souls of the Christian family and lead our world back to God. So visit the Fulton Sheen Institute's store and pick up your beautiful Fulton Sheen Aroma Rosary today. Get one for you, your family members, and your close friends, and don't forget your pastor. Thank you so much for your prayers and your support.